Right, so yesterday I showed Meta's new model that fits into a single gaming GPU. Today, like the exact opposite dropped. Qwen 3.8, a 2.4 trillion parameter model, frontier model, released as open weights. It's free to download right now. The only catch is that even at its smallest version, the file is 397 gigabytes. This is all kind of brand new to me too, like all local AI and all the news that's coming out. So let's kind of learn together here what actually shipped, why you and I probably can't run it anytime soon, and why like giant AI companies should be nervous about files like this. So my name is Jose. This is day 24 of recording a video every day for the next 30 days for YouTube. Let's go ahead and jump into the post. So this was posted on X earlier today, about 12 hours ago. Unsloth AI said Qwen 3.8 can now run locally with some fire emojis. So Qwen 3.8 is made by Alibaba. About a week ago, they promised that the much anticipated 27B version of 3.8 will be released, and it slipped. So we are past due on that one. However, the big one, the full-size Qwen 3.8, has been released. So Qwen 3.8-2.4T is now live, and Unsloth is shipping ready to run builds. So for those that don't know, Unsloth is a tiny but really famous team in local AI. When a new model drops, they're the folks who shrink it and package it up so that normal computers can load it. And usually within hours, they're like really quick. Think of them as people who take shipping containers and vacuum pack it all into like a tiny little suitcase. Sometimes even like several suitcases. So what exactly are they vacuum packing? Well, let's take a look at the numbers because honestly, they're a little absurd. So here's their official posts on their website, and this is referring specifically to Qwen 3.8-2.4T-A95B. So that's a mouthful. Let's go ahead and decode it together. So the 2.4T means 2.4 trillion parameters in total. A95B means only 95 billion are active at once. It's a mixture of experts. What that means is envision like a hospital with like thousands of specialists on staff. However, they're only kind of catering to a single patient. Only a handful can walk into the room at once. So that's why it can answer like really fast for the size of the actual model. But there's a trap, right? You still have to load and build the whole hospital. All 2.4 trillion parameters have to live in memory, even though only 95 billions work at it. So if we take a look here at the details, we see that there's different levels of kind of compression that are taking place. At its kind of highest form, the lossless version, it requires 4.9 terabytes. And then Unsloth's compressed build at 4-bit is 1.3 terabytes. At 2-bit, it's 657 gigabytes. And at extreme build, it is 397 gigabytes. That's pretty insane. It's a 91% smaller build than the original. And even that, with the kind of RAM requirements, you're looking at a total of about 450 gigabytes of RAM. So that's quite a bit. Okay, so we keep seeing GGUF. It comes up quite a bit during this article, as well as on Hugging Face and a few other places. For those that don't know, GGUF is just a file format. It's like the MP3s of local AI model. It's like the packaging that apps like Llama and Llama CPP know how to open. When someone says the GGUFs are up on like X, for example, all they mean is they are downloadable and ready to like run it at home. More details on the specific model from Unsloth. It does have a native context window of 256K, and it is extensible up to 1 million tokens. Benchmarks on the cards look for kind of frontier class coding and agents near the top. However, note that this is kind of self-proclaimed. If you look at the chart, It obviously competes directly with like Soul and Opus models, and even their previous version of Qwen 3.7. However, it is vendor models, vendor numbers, day one, and there's no real independent testing yet. So same kind of speech as yesterday, where Meta put out their benchmarking scores for Muse Glimmer, and they were obviously really good. They were actually a little more transparent and highlighted some areas where they actually weren't doing really well. However, this insane kind of quantization of these models and claiming these benchmarking scores, I think, is a little deceitful, right? Like, we have to have more testing before we say that compression at these sizes comes with little degradation, and that it competes with like ChatGPT Soul, as they kind of posted on X year, right? It's a big statement. We gotta understand that ChatGPT Soul is estimated to be in like the 5 to 7 trillion parameter range, whereas Qwen 3.8 at its most is a 2.4 trillion parameter model. So the baselines alone are fairly different. Obviously, there's a level of magnitude difference in quote unquote intelligence at that level. So 450 gigabytes. That's what this article says you need to run the smallest model. Reality check, most people are not going to be able to run this, right? Because it's still a lot of requirements. If I look at my own machine at 120 gigabytes of unified memory on a Ryzen AI Max chip, even the smallest version of this model roughly needs like 3.5 computers, right? If you have like a DGX Sparks, you need multiple Sparks in order to run this model. So who can realistically run this? Well, you need server hardware with 512 to like 700 plus gigabytes of RAM. It's obviously catering to enterprise people, people in research, businesses that can realistically afford this level of hardware for their use cases. Think finance, privacy, compliance, things like that. Or the folks that have like extreme home lab builds, right? Those people can definitely run it if they're operating at those levels. Unsloth's own post says that even at this range, you're expected to get around 20 tokens per second of generation, which is not particularly fast. And they do say the rule of thumb is that RAM plus VRAM equals quant size. Otherwise, it still works, just much slower due to disk offloading. So just some optimizations here. Honestly, 20 tokens per second is objectively a little slow. And you're spending hundreds of, possibly thousands of dollars on data center GPUs, right, to run something like this. So can it run? Technically, yes. This is like, again, the Kimi K3 territory, where free is free until you start realizing that there are some costs in order to kind of use the free. It's like whenever people say that you get a free boat, right? You do get a free boat, but then you have to pay for maintenance. Think of this like that, except you're given a yacht. So it's free, you get to keep the yacht. In order to actually use the yacht and properly maintain it and keep it docked somewhere, the maintenance costs alone are insane. My honest kind of take, 1-bit compression is pretty extreme. No one really knows how much intelligence survives after this level of kind of vacuum packing. It's really too early to tell, and we really need to wait on independent tests for this. The license on this one is also kind of iffy. It's Qwen's own custom license. So you can see that here. So if you are going to host, it's not even showing up. So who knows? So if you are going to run this, try to find the license and read it carefully. It's not like yesterday's video when we talked about MetaGlimmer being on Apache 2.0, which essentially gives the permission to do whatever you want with it. So if you do build it, read the terms if you can find them. Obviously, the link is not working, so who knows where they are. If I do find them, I'll link them in the description. Obviously, Meta's release yesterday was way more open than this, just off the announcement. So like, if no one can actually run it, why does this file on Hugging Face even matter? And this is the part I find really fascinating. Essentially, we're dealing with a single file threatening the US giants that currently exist. And honestly, it's more than the US giants. There's several models being created every single day. They're spending billions and billions of dollars in data centers and infrastructure to get these models to be, the top one or two that survive after all of this. And these types of models, open weight models, directly compete with that narrative. So 4 days ago, Meta shipped out a single GPU agent model, and now Alibaba just published their frontier class model that you know is 2.4 trillion parameters, and anyone can download it. These aren't like separate stories; it's one story and one trend. Like training these models costs billions, and the moment the weights are public, a multi-billion-dollar artifact becomes like a free file. So, what exactly are closed labs actually selling at this point? If these free files that we see now on Hugging Face get you 90% as good as like a $200 a month premium subscription to like Anthropic or, you know, OpenAI, the money has to like move somewhere, right? Either we're dealing with like speed, hosting, tools, trust, enterprise, but at a certain point, it stops being about the model itself and about a simple number game, right? You're dealing with a cost decision, right? If open weight models are as good as they claim to be, they solve very specific use cases that you can leverage, and they get you as good intelligence as what you would pay multi-million-dollar contracts for. Enterprise are going to start seriously consider adopting these open weight models. I think this is why Meta suddenly rediscovered open source yesterday, and why the pressure lands on everyone that's charging per token usage. I'm not predicting like that Anthropic and OpenAI or all these other model vendors are gonna die, right? They're not. I'm not predicting anyone's death here. But files like this one are why these AI giants are nervous, and why the local AI story I've been following is the most interesting thing in tech right now. And to be fair, like these AI giants aren't sitting still. Frontier closed models are clearly ahead by a wide margin, and they're serving AI at scale in their own like little fortress. But it's too early to call them the winners because there's so much competition from these open weights models. And this is kind of why I'm documented as this is happening, because it is really interesting to me. All right, so like the verdict, this is objectively the coolest file on the internet today, and sadly enough, almost nobody can open it, which is fine. There's two things to actually watch here. One, the 27B parameter version of Qwen 3.8. That is something that will fit on most machines, including mine, and it's still coming, quote unquote, soon. When that is, who knows? A lot of sites have the link for it, but when you click on it, you get 404s. So obviously it has not been released, and who knows when they'll actually release it. However, as soon as it does, I will drop a video as well as do some comparison testing. And speaking of comparison testing, I'm actually running one now as we speak while I record this video. I have kind of like a test sample prompts being ran in the background with local AI models for them, including Meta's new Muse Glimmer that I talked about yesterday. So if you want to go ahead and see that, I'll probably post that tomorrow and see who actually wins with, real local AI models running on my real hardware. All right, so if you want to see the video, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'll post the video tomorrow, hopefully, if the benchmarks go well. This is day 24, and I'll see you tomorrow.